All right, folks, I'm going to wait for people to stream in, get from the other stream over here. This is the commentary stream for Best of 5 Episode 3, The Buzzer Beater. I forgot to mention that, I think, in yesterday's stream, so if you'll watch the playback later, it might be confusing what stream we're talking about. But we are here. I have a bunch of questions saved up from previous days, and just waiting for chat to come in. So many windows. Click, click, click. Yo, Chris Tang. So I think that's I'm gonna try to figure out the OBS thing about doing Video Ninja, and I'll be in touch on maybe Discord today. We could maybe do a test Thursday to see if we could do like a Friday screen share thing. I am like legendarily, I don't know. I'm just not good at OBS, so it'll be a new thing for me to bring in another camera source, but we'll see how it works. I should have the bandwidth to do it. I think the audio will be the thing that could be tricky. So I'm going to have to test by streaming to like Twitch and having somebody watch or something. So that was the buzzer beater. And I wish I had, I can show it in a later stream, the live audio in that room. People lost their freaking minds when that happened, because I honestly remember standing there watching that happen. We were kind of trying to do the math in our heads, and we're like, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think Harry's going to make it. Also, keep in mind, we didn't have a score differential back then. We just had the two scores, so you had to kind of do the math in your head. We were all like staring at it, and I was beginning to think about like, okay, so Bo is going to proceed, so then who's he going to face next? I was like trying to think through the bracket in my head, and all of a sudden it happens, and he jumps up. And I think to this day, that shot of Harry jumping up like in the GoPro and like doing like the Rocky thing or whatever and running around, I think that's his like Twitch backdrop page. So yeah, it's super cool. And also, sometimes the question I get about that match is, how did Bo feel about it? And I mean, obviously in the moment, Bo, hugs him and I think responds really well to that loss. But to show you also like how Bo thinks about it in the long term, he really is friends with Harry, and Bo supported the Kickstarter for the show. And one of the things, he got one of the books, and I was late in making the books. I was later than my like original deadline. So I sent out some photo prints to the people who bought books as kind of like a thank you, and I apologize, I'll get it done soon kind of thing. And I asked him, hey, what photo do you want? And he said, I asked Bo, and Bo said, do you have a photo of me, and Harry after that match? And I was like, yes, I do. So I grabbed one of those still frames and blew it up and sent him like an 8x10 print of that. So that's what Bo is all about. And that's what a lot of these competitors are about. It's like, these are legitimately friends, going head to head, and whoever wins, that's the outcome. But I love to see it. And yeah, think about Vic saying that's the most expression I've seen from Harry have. Harry is actually a very expressive guy, but often he's so reserved in, sort of these public settings that you don't get to see him, deliver that kind of big emotional response. So it's great to see. Chris Tang saying, yeah, we'll try to set something up for Friday. And yeah, some tech tips about Video Ninja. Cool. All right, well, I'll give it a shot, and I'll try to test it here, and then we'll figure it out. Because I think, Friday, again, no spoilers. No spoilers in chat, please. But obviously Friday, I think would be a fitting time to bring in a guest, and I think the best guest I can think of is Chris Tang, to talk about the scope of the show and all the stuff that went into it. So there are 5 episodes. So the last episode will be Friday morning. By the way, important note for tomorrow. We talked about this in yesterday's stream. I'm going to schedule the premiere. I've already moved it. Tomorrow's premiere for episode 4, Thursday, is going to be 4 hours later than all the other ones, because I have to go to the stupid dentist and then come back and then start the actual premiere and then do this. So that's going to be a little funky, but we'll get it done. And I guess barring any dental situations, it should be fine. I don't think it is. It's just a cleaning, so we'll be fine. But it's a cleaning I have to do. I've been putting this off for like a year, so it's like we got to get in there. Yeah, when do we get the special championship between only the Doc crew? Carla King asks. I mean, I would lose unless I'm playing Carl, in which case I probably would win, because I don't think Carl's ever actually played this game. I do think some of that, like sometimes we see streamer matches, especially on Friday Night Fights on CDWC channel. And I think those kind of things where, especially if you can find matching skill levels, that's really fun. But the problem is right now, like, I can't think of, I mean, I don't know who is making like the Scooty documentary, but maybe I could compete with them because I know, you know, Adam and Vince and Trey are all better than me at NES Tetris. So they're the kind of documentary guys on this thing would all just destroy me. Um, but I could bust out I've got a TV back there and an NES and all that stuff is like, actually, I think you can see the TV right there. My little 13-inch. It's actually TV VCR. It's pretty sweet. Let's see. Higgins, do you think you would win? I think I'd win against you. Yeah, we'd have to do all best of fives. All right, so Dr. Jules apologizing for trying to bring Chris Tang into the picture. I don't apologize. I'll figure it out. If I can't figure it out, we won't do it. But I mean, I think it'd be awesome. So as long as Chris is game for it and we can make the tech work, why not? Like, rock on. Let's see. Hey, Paul Tessie, Mega Retro Man in the chat. Again, one of these kind of legendary players you can see him in a lot of shots. And I think didn't make the bracket in 2014, or if he did, I didn't see. It was like a round one match or something. But then, again, like no spoilers for the future past, but very significant matches would happen later involving this player. Not in 2014, but later on. And I was like in the room for the one I'm thinking of. And man, what a reaction. Like I was pointing the camera at if you go back and watch the thing I'm talking about. Yeah, wild. Jesus or Jesus, I think. I've been loving this documentary. How long have you guys been working on it? Awkward truth, 10 years. Not full-time. Full-time, maybe 3 years. If you add it all up, maybe 3.5. And mostly it was me, Carl King. I had some help from Adam Cornelius. We had some color work from AMJ, Anthony Jones. But the rest of the post-production was basically me and Carl. That was the main team. And obviously we had, we did a studio session with the commentators to get that new commentary in 2021. So I had to drive down to California to do that in a studio. So there's like and the narrator, Josh Boykin, was up here in Portland. Josh, by the way, runs IntelliGame and I think is currently streaming on Twitch. So if you want to check out Josh's, I can drop it in the chat here. Let's see if I got, yep, there it is. And he is playing Majora's Mask right now. So this is Josh's stream. He is the narrator of the whole show. And he's a friend. We used to, we shared an office a while back, I think in 2015 and 16. Met him and we would walk around, talk about games. He's a real thoughtful, he's like a gaming critic and also a streamer. One of the most thoughtful, like deep thinkers about gaming that I've ever encountered. So Carl, yeah, remembering the flood. Yes, I believe your upstairs neighbor, somehow water started coming through the ceiling the morning, because I'd come the day before to set up like the, studio thing. By the way, when we did the re-commentary, I bought a TV on like Amazon Prime Day and had it mailed to Carl's studio. And it was pretty big. I don't know, like 40 something, 50 inches. It was not a very good TV, but it was just like it was just to show, it had to be, I think it was 4K. And I had this mega thing, and I could show it maybe in a different episode or a different commentary. We'll look at it. But there's this thing where I'd assembled the game footage, the cameras, and then the additional other cameras. So there's like roving camera operators walking around. All of that stuff was on a TV that the guys were looking at that was just below where the cameras were, the video cameras that were pointed at them in the studio. And so when we did the commentary, the way it worked was I had a thing I called a briefing book, which is just a PDF, where for each match we'd prepared, with the help from Pumpy Heart, who had done a spreadsheet of stats. I had the competitive history of the two players, if there was any, because in a lot of cases there wasn't, because we were only 5 years in. And then quotes, like interview quotes from each of the players that I thought would represent something meaningful. So I'd also would brief the guys and say, in this match coming up, like watch for a drought on the left side or whatever, something like that, where if I knew there was something coming, and also say, hey, in this one for the first match, like we need to explain a couple things, like it's not same piece sets, you know, they're using DAS, why are they building with the well on the right, you know, we would introduce those concepts like a few at a time, so that if somebody's brand new to Tetris who's never seen it before were to watch this thing, hopefully those normal new questions like, you know, how come they're doing it this way would get answered in the natural course of commentary. Like, what is a burn? What do we mean by like down stacking, stuff like that, and explaining things like this isn't modern Tetris, like the rules are different, you don't have, you know, next previews, the randomness is much harder, that kind of stuff. So that was kind of built in. And also keep in mind that the show wasn't edited by that point, so often it seems like the commentators are responding to the edited show. In reality, we did the commentary before a lot of the editing, so the edit then responded to the commentary in a sense. So it was trying to like make the two things sort of sync, and it worked out, I think, pretty well. Gaming, yeah, Dr. Jules. No, I met him at lunch actually, but yeah, he's awesome. Let's see. We'll read in the chat here. Offline facts. Yeah, Game Scout saying, I saw Pumpy credited as a researcher. Did he have any significant contributions? Mainly what he did, I think all that we had time for was assembling those stats and helping with that briefing book, that packet for the matches, which was really significant, obviously, because there's so much gameplay. Prepping the commentators is really important. And so because he had made those sheets for, I think, a couple of years for actual CTWC, I wanted the exact same format so that the guys would see what they're used to, right? So it wasn't like, you know, some brand new thing, but they had access to like a Google sheet and a bracket that was filled out to where they were. So they could go back and see, you know, who eliminated who on the path to getting here and all that stuff. Yeah, learning about rolling. I love chat. By the way, one thing that's funny about these Q&A streams is it apparently takes YouTube about 24 hours to get the chat replay to work. So if you watch this, you know, in the next 24 hours, before that shows up, the chat replay is really important. And I can't control that. I have it turned on, but until YouTube like processes the VOD or something, it doesn't actually show up for replays afterwards. Yeah, talking about Mega Retro Man and rolling. That's a really common question that comes up is like, what happens when like a DAS player, like we see in the show, tries to pick up a modern technique like rolling? And I asked them all, because rolling wasn't invented, obviously, you know, during the interviews in 2014 for sure, and even through, you know, 2020 and stuff. So in my interviews, I asked everybody about tapping. Like, have you tried it? Is it something you're working on? Because at that time, we saw tapping as, because Thor had done it in 2010 and before, we saw tapping as this clear other playstyle that had advantages. And everybody said in 2014, I tried it, I can't do it, it's too hard, it hurts my hands, I haven't figured it out. And part of that was a grip issue. GameScout actually covers this very well in some of his videos, where working on the grip and sort of how you deal with, because Thor's thumb tapping, I maybe there's like one or two other people who would do that, but the actual, like, that method of doing it is really difficult. So, you know, I think if you just try vibrating your left thumb, maybe you have the ability to do that, but most people don't. Another thing that would come out of that question is people in those days in 2014 would say, oh, I can do the extra tap. That was usually what they called it, the extra tap. And what they meant was quick tapping. Now we have a term for that. But back in 2014, we hadn't settled as a community on what that was. And the quick tap, as I understand it, is like, you know, you have a DAS move that goes a certain distance. And so you execute that move, and then at the last, you know, frame of your move, you then release your thumb, press it again to get one more, you know, space over. And in so doing, you screw up your DAS for the next move, typically. So that's a very important technique in like modern DAS play. And you see some of it happening here. Again, no spoilers, but like you'll see some of that tomorrow's episode and the one after that. So the real, you know, DAS experts were doing that stuff certainly in 2014. But talking about it and knowing the timing of it and stuff like that, that was a little more obscure. Like Alex Kerr would explain those things at a party. If you asked him, would get out some graph paper and be like, okay, here's how the like frame timing works and stuff. So it's wild. Oh, Carl, thanking me for being the best producer he's ever worked with. Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, you're the best editor and score writer and performer, and also helped me with breaking the story and everything else. Thank you too. It's great to work with friends, like legitimate friends. And Carl and I have been friends since high school. We've done a bunch of stuff over the years. So it's like, you know, people, I think when they do shows and stuff are always like, oh, everybody was great. Oh, so I was like a family, you know, and I'm like, I always feel like that's kind of BS. In this case, it's like I had this pre-existing friendship with a close person. We grew up in a small town in Southwest Florida, you know? So for us to both be out on the West Coast working in documentaries, you know, that's kind of surprising to me looking back on it. I wouldn't have predicted that that would happen. But it was really legitimately great to work with somebody who you're close with on the edit and the music and stuff. So Chris Tang, yeah, a tapper who uses the Thor grip. I mean, I think that's pretty unusual, but like, I'm pretty sure that Adam Cornelius said that he used that same grip too, and he was a tapper until he eventually switched to DAS because he wasn't able to tap on 19 as effectively. So yeah, I mean, like there's, in those early years, there was a lot of like experimentation, you know, to get to where we are today, where we kind of have, I think it's better understood what the different options are as far as grips and techniques and stuff. Chris Tang developing a new rolling technique. I want to see what that is. All right, reading the chat here. Yep, rolling and Killer Queen. I've heard of these. Obviously, track and field, you know, they're the fly hacking, that kind of stuff is interesting. Oh, yeah, Chris Tang having stream problems because of stream keys. Ugh, bleh. Yeah. All right, I'm going to look at some of the banked questions I have here. One of the things I wanted to mention is in the live audio of in the room. It's not in the show because we did the commentary over again. I think what Chris Tang said live was Harry Hong defeats the Grim Reaper of Tetris. That was the line. Because the Grim Reaper of Tetris was the kill screen, and basically he was one line away from the kill screen to take that match. And at the moment, it wasn't clear to me in the moment whether he got it. I thought he got it at the very last line. He actually had one line to spare. But it was so like tense, and like also the projection was a little messed up that year, so it was hard to tell what was going on. So in the room, people were flipping out because they knew it was ultra close and like maybe not going to happen. So being able for Harry to focus up and get those last couple Tetrises to basically scale and do that at like 27 and 28. I mean, he was right on that edge. So to be able to do that is really impressive, and that's part of why I love that match so much. And I think it's a real showcase of a lot of things. One of them is keeping your composure and figuring out how to recover from like a lot of misdropping and struggling, and then seeing this huge deficit and knowing that that's going on. Because by the way, he has headphones in, but there's no music playing. So that's just kind of like a very minor, you know, it's like, it's not blocking out much sound, if any. Are there, Game Scout, yeah, you asked if there are shots from the scuffed camera. Yes, there are. I saw one. It's this next, no, not that one. Maybe it's the next break. So there were some shots. I'm going to blow this up when we get to one of these. That's not it. Sorry to scrub through my own video, but this is what I have to do to find what Scout wants to see. Those are fine. Those are normal. Oh, come on. No. Well, all right. Let's go earlier. I know there are some shots. Here's the thing. There was a camera that was totally messed up, like super messy and super underexposed. And so to use those shots, we had to do, AMJ had to do some really heinous stuff in post-production. Well, I guess it was between these two games. Let's see if I can, this one. Okay, let me blow this up. So this shot was, I want to say, 5 or 6 stops underexposed recorded to MP4. And it looks, and I don't have a way in this version because this is the rendered output, to turn off the color correction filter here. But this looks pretty okay, right? And in context, if you play it and you see the shot after
dethroning Jonas.
Like, look at the shot after it. This looks, to my eye, a lot better. Like, the color is better, the dynamic range is better if you compare it to this. So, like, if you look in the dark black areas, like down at their legs and stuff, and also at the kind of the light areas, they're kind of blown out and you don't really see any detail. Then switching back to a kind of a properly exposed shot, there is some detail in those areas. So this was a real hard challenge because this camera was getting important angles, this underexposed camera. So I had to use it in many cases. There was no other option, you know, and that becomes more pronounced in 4 and 5. So we'll see that again, you know, the next 2 days. And in general, color correction is like a job where, and by the way, if I compare this camera to, like, this is the same moment. So again, properly exposed camera there, then we'll sort of frame through this. So to not proper. So proper, if you look at the green on Haley's shirt there with the, Haley's on the left. So look at the green of the shirt and look at kind of the hair tone, hair color. And I'll flip it over and we'll look at that green. Ugh. That ain't right. And the blue of the chairs, that ain't right either. There's like some stuff that's really wrong. But that's what happened with that. So anyway, I'll make this small again. But that's one of the problems I have is I am red-green colorblind. I have this thing called deuteranomaly. And so I can't see reds and green. I can see that they exist, but I couldn't tell you with any specificity which one is which. Like what kind of, what is it? What flavor of green is it? I got nothing. So I need somebody else with proper color vision and the training to do color correction to come in and color correct my shots just as a normal thing. Like I'm aware that this broadcast is probably a little bit warm because I probably have wrong color temperatures in my lights, but you know, whoops. So AMJ came in and really kicked ass on that because we had all these cameras that were all different. They were all like, one's Sony, one's Canon, one's Nikon, one's a GoPro. They're all different sensors and all different stuff. And so we had to try to make them play nice. And he did a really good job of that. All right. More chat comments. Yeah, Scott really wants to see that scuffed video. I mean, it's a production thing. Like, you know, I totally understand because I've been saying, you know, there are some miracles that were worked. And I would love to be able to show you here. I'll have to show in a different stream at some point when you can turn off the color filter and you see like, oh, it's like black. Like this frame here was like totally toast. It was muddy and horrible. And the thing is, the camera operator couldn't see that on their screen. It looked kind of okay and normal because they're looking at a screen that's like this big because it's 2014, dudes. And there's no like histogram. There's nothing to tell them how the exposure works except just you're kind of eyeballing it and being like, I don't know, you know. So the camera was just misconfigured. The shutter was really messed up. So, whoops, it happens. Yeah, so denoising, we did some stuff with, it's a whole thing, but we did, like usually there were 2 lumetries on those cameras and also often neat video was in there as well to clean up some noise after we pumped the exposure way up. Okay, so the feeling in the room at the buzzer beater was really intense. And I again just want to mention this as a prep, but not a spoiler for the next 2 episodes. The feelings in those in the room for a lot of these matches was really intense. And it's the same today, you know, in 2024 and every year, you get that like really hyped up feeling of like, oh wow, these 2 players are really close and like somebody tops out and like, are they going to be able to make it because the kill screen's coming? You know, there still is a kill screen now. It's different, but it's, you know, same idea. The energy is intense. Also at the time, Chris Tang said something to the effect of like, this is one of the top moments in Tetris history. If we ever have like a rundown of like the top 10 moments ever, the buzzer beater probably is one of them. And I totally agree with that. And just to think that like that match at the time, everybody who was there experienced it, but then I don't think it was ever on YouTube or the stream as far as I know. So right now we're just getting like this match I think is historically significant. And, you know, obviously Bo knew about it, like, and Harry knew about it, but it wasn't something that was easily examinable because of the stream problems and those just sort of projection problems we had that year. All right, so Kingsman says, Higgins, did you interview Bo after the match? Clearly he looked happy for Harry, but that chase down really can demoralize a player in a decider. I did interview Bo that evening. with Haley. Actually, there's a room over there. We tried to make the room look like multiple rooms by just shooting in different angles and stuff. So we had Bo and Haley, and then we also had Chris Brady in there. And both of those interviews didn't make it into this cut because basically what he says is he's like, yeah, I mean, I really wanted to win, right? Like I came here to win. I played to win. I gave it my best. And if I'd gotten another line, right, or two, I would have won. So yeah, I wish I had won. Basically what he said is I wish I'd won, but I'm really glad that if I couldn't win, that it was Harry that was going to proceed, which I think is really, that says a lot about, kind of character, but also friendship. Like he's friends with this guy and he really does he wants his friend to succeed if he can't, right? But, and he looked at it and he was like, yeah, it was a tough loss. It was hard. Like I didn't, no kidding. But he had that sporting behavior in the moment and the evening, after. He was okay with it. And if you watch, there's a bonus feature on this channel. If you watch the Great Max Out debate, that is the after party for 2014. There's no spoilers in that for the show, but they're just talking about, Max Out stuff. And Bo is in that quite a bit. Bo's talking just about, the relative level of difficulty of what it takes to do a Max Out in that era. Dr. Jula says, can using night mode on the PC interfere with precise video editing when focusing on colors? Yeah. So the thing where it tries to reduce blue light exposure, for example, you cannot use that in any video production workflow at all. You have to turn it off. Now, of course, not being the color person, all I'm doing is copying and pasting somebody else's color work because I literally cannot see some of the colors that are happening. So I'm copying and pasting them, and then I would have to render, I'd have a render from AMJ of the whole show, and then I would copy and paste per clip his settings onto my clips, then I'd render my version, and then I would put them together into a timeline, cut them in half, or draw a box around it, and then play that back in slow motion. And if you could perceive that it was cut in half, if I could perceive that, then I knew I'd made a mistake and I had to go back and find the clip where I'd made a mistake. That's how I did the color. And it's one of those things of having a very minor disability like color blindness in certain contexts can be you can make do. That's what I had to do. But it prevented me from doing some of the work I would like to have done. But I just can't. I don't have the eyeballs to do it. And you can do some stuff with scopes. You can look at the the computer can tell you, and the cameras can often tell you, this is the white point that we think, if you take a known, I wish I had it in front of me. I usually have a thing called an X-Rite color checker, which is an 8x10 card with white and black and shades of gray and then a bunch of color swatches. And if you show that to your camera, I had all the interviewees show this thing and tilt it back and forth. Chris Tang will probably remember that. What I can do later, because I wasn't sure who was going to color correct this or if I would have to do it kind of by myself, you can kind of get part of the way there by doing an eyedropper on the white and saying hey computer, that's white, and hey, this is full black and here's medium black, so can you get close? And it's that's okay, but when you start getting into more detailed stuff oh, the face of this person is kind of overexposed, so I'm going to pull that back a little bit by masking out their face and doing a little exposure difference. And then there's too much green in the background or whatever. That is beyond me. So that's why I needed the pro to come in and do it. And that stuff did happen on the show a fair bit, where there'd be complicated masking stuff happening. Let's see. Kingsman, was this episode title always on your mind, or did it take a while to decide on it? I think it's the perfect name, the buzzer beater. So yeah, I debated calling it that because I felt like it might be a spoiler that somebody would be looking for a buzzer beater. And for people who don't know, and I don't really know, but I know buzzer beater is a basketball term where there's a clock, and when the clock runs out, the buzzer buzzes. And if you've got a shot in the air and it goes through the hoop, even after the buzzer goes, it counts, right? So that's the idea, is you come down to the line, and Tetris also has a timer, right? The timer is when you hit 29 for DAS play, and that's what happened here. So I'm worrying that I'm going to spoil it, because if we see a big significant chase down, we might know that someone wins it, they execute a buzzer beater. But I also felt it'll be fine. I'm not that concerned about it. And I thought also it was more iconic as a title. And I think it will become iconic over time as people talk about this match. That's just my assumption. But I think that I assume that this match will be analyzed and people will think about it and talk about it quite a bit. Dr. Jules, what is your vision or goal with documenting CWC down the line? Seems like the most recent one, cinematography, more camera angles, was a focal point. Where do you see the ceiling or lack of one? Let me take a drink and think about this. You can hear my ice. You're welcome. At the moment, I have no plans for making another film like this. It did take me forever and it was a lot of work. And to be honest, like, I'm right now really enjoying the upside of that work, you know, seeing people enjoy the show and talk about it and stuff. That's awesome. And I really appreciate that. And that's super cool. And that's why you do it. You know, it's like, I'm doing this not for the financial reward because, you know, I didn't make money. I lost money doing this show, but I'm doing it because at this point it's about community and trying to tell a story. And I really think the story is worth telling. And in its entirety, when we get through the whole 5 episodes, I think that that larger scope story is meaningful, especially within the Tetris community, but also to a general audience, to people who just watch it. I think that's unusual to have a single year where you can, well, in this case, it's not just a single year. It's focused on the 5th year, but also incorporates the previous 4 years. To do something like this today, you'd have to incorporate 15 years worth of stuff, which is even more complex than 5 by, you know, obviously a lot. And you'd have to be dealing with even a broader set of players. You know, we have a bracket that's often it's bigger than 32 at this point. There's even like sub brackets. There's, you know, silver and bronze. So telling those stories in a coherent way is, I think, even harder now. And I'm just not ready to sign up for something like that. If somebody were to walk up and say, like, you know, here's $1 million, make a Tetris documentary, like, I don't know, sure, I'd consider it. But I don't think that's likely to happen. If you're out there, well, I guess get in touch. But right now, my role is I am a camera operator or the head of the camera department in some cases for CDWC for the live shows. And this year we really leveled up quite a bit. When you saw, as you said, like when you had the you know, either 2-up or 4-up players, I was on that close-up face shot that was very saturated and kind of beautiful because the lighting was really good this year. We had good backlighting, so people's hair would kind of glow. I was on, we had a camera, I think it was a Sony, I'm gonna get this wrong, ZV-EF1, something like that. I was not my camera. I'd never used the brand even before. I was like, oh, how does Sony do focus? You know, and Gilbert Tang handed me the camera and the lens, and it was on a tripod with wheels. So I was like wheeling it around and dollying around and getting these shots. Also, it had a very long lens on it. It was a 70-200, and because it was a crop sensor, that was more like a 135-300 if you're a camera nerd. That'll mean something to you. But that allowed me to be down on the floor shooting up at the stage, because this year we had a stage. We physically you had to walk up onto it and get these really close shots where we're just getting like the head, you know, from way down on the ground. So that was cool. And I enjoy that work. I feel like I'm good at that work, especially having done it for years now, and with this perspective of the show and all that stuff. So I'm comfortable to kind of just leave it at that for now. And I may, you know, something else may happen, but that's the current plan. Is just keep doing cameras. All right, more from Dr. Jules. Let's see. Yeah, you should take care of your eyes if you can. By the way, I've gotten to the point with my vision where I get new glasses prescriptions about every year, and they're not getting. Most years they don't get worse, but I've hit a point recently where close focus is now a problem. Like if I hold something up that's like this close to me, I cannot focus that close. And I have single vision glasses, so I'm gonna have to go to bifocals soon, which I hate those. I really hate them, but it's time. I actually, for a long time when I was doing video production work, I would have 2 sets of glasses, and one would be on like a lanyard around my neck. So and one is close focus for looking at a monitor like this, and then to check focus and check color and stuff, even though the color is like, I'm doing the best I can kind of thing. You know, so I was like one of these weird dudes with 2 sets of glasses, like flipping them back and forth. that's not very usable like in a day-to-day sense, because it's just all this stuff hanging around your neck. All right, next one. As a journalist, do you have an interest in doing profiles on some people in the community? I mean, I do. I also feel like other people are doing that work, I think, well enough. I think it's different than what I would do if I were doing it. And I don't mean that as like a, a diss, but it's just, the thing that if you go back and look at the first article I ever wrote about Tetris, it's called Playing to Lose. So if you Google like Playing to Lose Tetris, it probably will come up, or Playing to Lose Higgins, it certainly will show up. The thing that most interested me initially was this idea of friends competing, right? And I was kind of like, what does it mean for close friends? In that case, that article was about Bo and Ben, because it was from 2013, and about how they had this like tournament history of, it goes one way, it goes the other way. And, I was fascinated by a tournament that was so small that so many of the top players would be in that situation where they're like close with somebody. So they don't want their friend to lose, but they also want to win. But it's kind of okay if their friend wins, but also it hurts to lose. So the whole thing is this messy thing. And that's what I wanted to like really pick apart. And part of that 2013 interest was what carried over into doing this film. And I think today, there are some narratives in the community that I'm really interested in. And I would love to see, I don't know how to do it, because often, from the US, I'd have to do travel, or somebody would have to do travel. Because for instance, like I think the Sidnev story is really interesting right now. Sidnev has this thing where she's come in second so many times that I think it's probably, I can only imagine. I've never talked to her or asked about this, but like I've pointed cameras, I've been right there for like, for example, the 2023 finals. I was operating the reaction camera, and like, I think she, in fact, also at one point, when I was up there, I don't know if it was game 3, which game it was, but there was one game where the seed was just rotten. And it was funny because I think she goes, "What the bleep is this seed?" And Fractal is like, "Yeah, this is terrible." But it was like, it's cool to be up there, to actually be close to people, to get those kind of reactions. And you can't necessarily hear it on the stream. You can see them talking, but you can't hear what they're saying. But I think it would be interesting to look at that story, because again, there's so many opportunities for that story to reach a triumph, to get to that point where a major tournament #1 finish, which is so close, right? You have a player who's gotten so close to the World Championship, CTM many times, so many things, to get one of those. I think, and by this I mean CTM Masters or TWC, I think I'm curious about the emotional arc of that story. So that's the kind of thing that I would be interested in. But again, right now I'm trying to I'm still, I'm trying to make the Blu-rays for this movie. So I'm trying to be like, okay, just pace yourself, do the work you've already signed up to do, and then the rest of it will work itself out. And also with people like Game Scout in this community, there's excellent work being done all the time. Like truly like world-class stuff. So I think, I don't look at it and say like, oh, I've got to be in there. I've got to get in there to like tell the story because nobody else is doing it. That's not true. There are people who are telling great stories in Tetris, like on the regular. So I'm very happy that that's happening, and I don't feel like stuff's getting lost, Okay. Yeah. Media tour. And Game Scout saying, yeah, spend the time to relax and finally bask in the satisfaction of a completed product. Thank you. This is like good advice, right? Also good advice for other creators. If you do something that takes years, like literally years, you're going to need to take a little time for all the things, like just to like take a break, but also to like let it sink in, because it still doesn't feel real to me that y'all are, this is happening. So, I mean, just being like totally transparent. And also at CDWC this year, it did not feel real that I would walk into a room and people would be like, "Yo, Higgins," who I didn't recognize, and be like giving me a high five, asking me to sign something. People I think have known who I am in past years, but this was different. Like this was massively different because people had watched the show in the paid version a lot. Like I must have shaken 100 hands, shaken, I think it's shaken, whatever. And just trying to process that emotionally, you know what I mean? Because also just to get inside like my brain, like when I shot this in 2014, I was telling people like, man, this will be out next year. I was so naive, and I tried to make that happen. And then next year, CDWC comes, it's not out. And I'm aware at that point that like I have a serious problem because my rough cut's 3.5 hours long. It doesn't have any game footage in it. So I kind of know something's wrong, but I get up there and they interview me on the stage, and I was probably online, and I'm like, sure, it'll be out next year in 2016. I'm like, that'll definitely happen. And I work on it and work on it. And at that point, between 2015 and 16, I even shot some more. I shot a little bit more with Terry at that point. But I was digging a deeper hole basically because I was just adding more stuff. And I didn't want to talk about it much, because I was like, I don't see a path to me finishing this movie from like 2016-ish through about 2020. So there was like 4 years when I would come to the tournament, people would be like, hey, when's the movie coming out, bro? It's overdue. And I'm like, I was not actively working on it at that point. I just I'd taken it, put it aside, and just working my other jobs. And I felt some shame, right? Because people had welcomed me into their home. They'd spent time with me, right? And I had not held up my end, which was make the movie and put it out there. So I would be like, I felt this project to me was a source of embarrassment and shame. And, I kept coming to CWC, but I would still be kind of like, ugh. And at one point even, and Scout can, I think, can verify this, I even approached Game Scout and said, I've heard, this was years ago, probably 2018 or 19 or something. And I was like, hey, I've heard you doing this YouTube thing. Do you think you could edit my movie? Let's talk later. And I don't know if we ever really talked, but like I was casting about for like some X factor. Like maybe I could hand the footage to somebody else and they could finish it. I could pay them or something because I couldn't figure it out. Right. And then when the pandemic happened, this is like the quintessential pandemic movie because it was mostly done by me and by Carl independently in 2 different states in this room and him in his studio room, I needed that time and also the big perspective shift that Gilbert Tang brought, which is just, dude, make it long, make it be 5 hours long and go ahead and make it 5 episodes, which without that, this never would happen. And also without a Kickstarter that brought in $20,000, I wouldn't have had the funding to feel comfortable sitting in a room. I didn't, again, when I did the 2020 fundraiser in December of 2020, I was confidently saying the show will be done in a year. Well, that's a theme, Higgins. You might want to notice that when you say that. I had a timeline laid out for what that was going to be. And then, of course, just take a minute here, but like, some stuff happened. Not just the pandemic, but, we lost Jonas in 2021, in January. When I got that call, I was absolutely devastated. And also, there was like a second order problem for me, which was like, okay, this is terrible. But also how I, in my mind, was going to make a sports movie where the sport is Tetris. And then one of my main characters has died. So what is my responsibility now to his story? And how is that different than it was a month earlier? Also, matching that in time, my editor left. So I had this like sort of contract with an editor that was like, this is what we're going to do. Here's the timeline. We're going to do these things for this budget and everything. And, I understand the reasons, but like the editor had to bow out. And so I got a second editor, and that one also, because of pandemic reasons, quit too. And it was only at that point. So basically I had a plan, then that plan got tossed in the trash. And then also the Jonas thing threw me way for a loop. Then I had another plan with another editor, and that also went away. And so basically I was looking at this and I'm like, okay, the universe is telling me something, which is I can't fully rely on some external person coming in here and saving me for money. I can't just hand them a whole check and just say, go in there and figure it out, because they keep having to do something else or moving on. And also I now feel like the story is so important that I don't want to hand it to somebody else and say, make a bunch of decisions. And so I said, okay, I've never edited a feature length anything before. I've done a ton of shorts, like 15-minute things or 5-minute things, a bazillion of them. So I had to go from doing things that were like 15 minutes long at the most to doing the thing that was 5 hours long. And that process took me years. Like it took me 3 years to get there. And Carl King came in and filled that gap because he was like, look, I'll start, you just tell me what the scene is about. show me some footage and I will make at least a rough cut. And then he sort of weaned me. He like was teaching me how to do it and kind of getting me past my own mental block of, I didn't know how to edit. I didn't have the confidence to edit. I'll put it that way. I didn't have that self-confidence that said, I can do this, So seeing that work from Carl helped me get past my own stuff, So then I took it over and, finished the edit myself, right? And that took a lot of time, like it just did, because I was, pretty new to this level of edit where you've got to bring a color person, you've got to do like the whole bunch of sound work that had to happen. There was a whole scoring process that took, like basically more than a year to like get the score fully from beginning to end. So anyway, complicated project and complicated emotional journey for me. And now I'm in a place where that thing that I was ashamed of, of my performance on, I'm now proud of, and I'm trying to figure out how to, I know this might sound weird, I'm trying to figure out how to feel about that. Like, I'm trying to like make sure that my reactions are genuine, and I'm like making space to have like a human reaction. When somebody says thank you, or this is an awesome episode or something, I am trying to figure out like, oh, it's okay to feel good about that. Because for so long I avoided thinking about this project because I had shame. So I hope that helps somebody out there who is currently sitting on a project that's taken them way too long and it feels like it's never going to happen. They're never going to finish it. Man, this movie took 10 years. I was shooting in 2014, right? It's 2024 now. It can happen. It's hard, but you can do that. And I think that's important to talk about. All right, looking at chat, and we're probably going to wrap up pretty soon because I've been talking for a long time. Yeah, anybody who wins the lottery, let me know, and I'll make a documentary. I've got other topics too, but, more Tetris stuff. Yeah, acid home. Oh, talking about camera stuff. And Dr. Jules, there's been a discussion about miking up the players, especially like in the finals. We tried to do some of that apparently this year. And there's been a push for that for a couple of years now. And again, there's no like significant disagreement, but I personally disagree. I would personally, because the current approach is to put a lavalier mic, like a clip-on mic, on a shirt, because that'll get you the best audio of them speaking, and then run the wire maybe behind their shirt or whatever down to a little transmitter pack, or maybe it's wired, My concern is, if you take a player operating at the highest level, like in the finals or maybe the semis, and you suddenly put a microphone up their shirt and clip it to them, that could very well, especially with rolling, this extra stuff on you, like it's touching you and you've got to account for it. I worry that could interfere with play. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's not a big deal, but I think I saw a dog in a chat somewhere say that he was asked to mic up this year and declined, which I think is totally... Like, you should, as a player, you should definitely be like, this is what I'm comfortable with, and this is what I'm not. Especially things like lights, if you have an option. If somebody says, can I put a light here, and that's bugging you, have them turn it off because you got to perform, That's the most important thing. So I do wonder, if it were me, I would use, what do you call it, a shotgun mic, like it's a long skinny mic. Maybe put it over their head pointing down at them or something, or where the TV is pointing straight at them, because you still get a pretty good audio, thing. It wouldn't be as good, but it's not a physical on their body type of thing. So we are thinking about that a lot, and that the ability to get any audio or better audio from the players while they're talking, because they talk to each other and they say stuff and they react to the refs and they react to the game. We'd love to see that and hear that in the live streams. And I think that will happen in some form, but the question of how to do it in a way that won't negatively influence the game, I think there's some details there to be worked out. Yeah, it's interesting. Chris Tang says, this year especially, it's really been a life-changing realization that sometimes losing can be the better outcome. Even for myself versus Robin Mahara in 1990, losing led me on my best life path. So there's a theme here. Chris Tang, and you'll see this more in the next couple episodes, Chris Tang coming around with like the life lesson to be picked up from something. I think that's really significant. And that's also part of why like Chris is the MVP of the show, because I would ask him to basically synthesize, make sense of a really complex and thorny issue, and he'd like think about it for a moment, and then deliver to me in the interview, because I interviewed him in 2021 after we did the commentary. So those, by the way, that's the last interview we did, and that was very helpful in being able to tell the full story. And again, no spoilers, but you'll see what I mean. All right, Game Scout confirming the rotten seed in 2023 was Game 5. Yeah, that seed was... Bleh, my seed was garbage. For self-promo, what other work are you working on? Well, right now, thank you for asking me to self-promo, so I'll remember to do this. If you go to... There's a couple things here. You can tip me if you wish. There's a link there. Tips are appreciated. I don't expect it, but like if you want to send me $5, cool. That'd be awesome. Or like tell people to go watch this show on YouTube. That will lead to revenue at some point, and I'd love that. I'm also selling stuff. I'm selling this show. If you go to best-of-5movie.com, you can pay for the show. You get downloads, you get streams. The downloads are DM free. They're just like an MP4 file you can put on your Plex or whatever. Go wild. We're selling mugs. This is a design by Danny Sharkey, and it's on both sides, and there's like a black inner thing and a black handle. Kind of sweet. These are in a shop on the store at best-of-5movie.com. We also have, I don't think I have it in front of me, a picture book and also stickers. So here's an example of our stickers. There are things for sale, is my point. And you can buy them, and that would help me out. Because I made a lot of each of these things thinking that there would be a lot of demand, and there's been some demand, but let's just say I have extra mugs. And mugs are really, the mug comes in a box, like a shipping box. Let me show you this. To survive shipping, the box is this big and the mug is like this big. So I don't even remember if it's 50 or 100, but I have a significant number of these in my basement. So I want to get those out of here. Those are helpful. At the moment, I don't think I have anything else to promo. Go to my website, chrishiggins.com. I've written various books, and you can buy those. And, I often get revenue from that. If you want a signed book of any kind, I have copies, and I'm happy to do that for free. Or if you buy one, I'll just sign it, and mail it to you. All right, checking the chat again. DK, have you thought about uploading YouTube shorts, like an episode snippet or something else like pre-restoration game footage? I kind of thought about it. I haven't done it. I haven't even looked at it really. But I'm like, yeah, I'm aware that that's a thing. And yeah, I'm pretty confident that in the next probably month or so, I'll dip my toe into those waters because there's so much footage, there's so much leftover stuff, or showing here's a shot before and after. That would be cool to see. Reading chat. Yeah. King, you're, I don't know. Me and Scout, the thing is, I think we're very different filmmakers, right? I'm coming out of I think kind of an old guard, the kind of filmmakers, the kind of documentarians that I followed are Errol Morris is my favorite documentarian. I liked Roger and Me, which was the first big documentary that I ever really saw. I didn't think the later work by that guy, Michael Moore, was... I thought that first one was really good. Later stuff, meh. I also really like Ross McElwee, and these are some of these are pretty esoteric. I don't expect anybody to know who Errol Morris or Ross McElwee are, but if you look them up, that's where I'm coming from when I think about documentary film. Because that's when I came up. I came up in an era, I was born in the 70s, so I'm coming up in an era when film was literally on film. When I was at at school in college, the film students were cutting on film. They were cutting, they were the last class to ever cut on film at Florida State, was the year that I was there. So when I look at this, I was not of kind of a modern media generation. I'm coming at this from a much older point of view. And when you see people who are natives of the future, with what to me is the future, like Game Scout, where he's coming in it from, I think, a point of view where YouTube would be, and I think YouTube is very influential to what we think of as documentary or nonfiction filmmaking today, and not necessarily in a bad way, right? Modern filmmakers, I think, have more fluency in that kind of filmmaking, whereas the fluency I have is with an older and frankly kind of obsolete type of vocabulary, where it's a little more stodgy, you know, it's sort of slower paced. So some of this project, like if I'd edited this 10 years ago, I don't know how the edit would have been different. It probably would have been slower. There's a lot of stuff in here where I'm cutting for no reason, just to kind of keep there being cuts, you know, like I'm punching in and punching out and stuff. And I learned that from watching modern media, because now, you know, YouTube has changed a lot of expectations about even audio cutting. How much silence do you leave in a gap when someone's talking? Even guys like the brothers, the Green brothers, and they were basically copying Zay Frank. I mean, I don't mean that as a diss. It's just like, that's what they were doing. Zay Frank had invented that idea of like, cut all the audio gaps, just remove all of them and jump cut everything. That has led to some big changes. So I am happy to let new generation filmmakers come in and do the work, right? Like, I don't think there's anything about what I'm doing that's like special or better. It's just different. That's just where I'm coming from. And I think that having those different voices in the conversation, like, that's great. That's the whole point of communities. That's the whole point of communities. There's different people coming in and doing stuff. So I'm very happy to let other people come in and say, I'm actively, this is my thing, like Game Scout. So, you know, but for me, I'm coming at this mostly as a filmmaker, but also a writer. And I'm not sure where I'm headed next. You know, like I might make another film, I might write, I might do something else. So, you know. All right, I'm going to read this chat one last time, see if there are any more questions, and then we'll wrap it up. Lav mics and heart rate monitors were put on the players for the Kansas City regional finals, and Rhubarb requested to take it off because it was affecting his rolling. Yeah. I mean, especially the heart rate monitors. I think that's like a band, right? That could be annoying. Yeah, Duke saying, I like the inclusion of retroactive commentary to drive home that while a lot of it was filmed in 2014, a lot of what people said was 2014. The perspective pulls from the next 7 years too. I read that wrong. But the point is, the guys, when we went into the commentary booth, they're kind of saying like, when am I? Right? Because they're commentating in a post-Jonas death world. And it was actually pretty fresh at that point, because this is like July of 2021 when they did the commentary. And so we were all, you know, kind of in shock at some level. And I think my intent anyway, whether I said it correctly in the room or not, was I want you to like pretend that you're back in 2014, like, and that's sort of the standard that you're bringing in. But I can't ask you to pretend that the future never happened. That's dumb, right? So, you know, like, I don't want you to like never mention that the future exists, or, you know what I mean? Like, so I was trying to say, like, the basic idea is I want you to do what you do, like react to matches, do the commentary, do the thing, and what comes to your mind, say the thing that comes to your mind. But ideally, we're doing that without talking about later outcomes for those players specifically. Because I think that could be a spoiler, basically, or it could be weird, because we're trying to occupy 2014 in the movie. But I did appreciate when they would say things like, maybe in the future we might see, you know, certain kinds of things in competitive play. And then we did, of course, because they were there. Paul Tessie saying he enjoys heckling with commentators while playing and small talk with the opponent. Yeah. And yeah, sometimes it calms your nerves. Yeah, that thing of like, your reactions to misdrops and droughts aren't Quaid level words, but it's close. Being up there, like being on the camera crew up on the stage, when you're 3 or 4 feet away from the people, you know, which has been the norm up until this year, you get to hear a lot of that. And it's hard. It's easy to forget when that's what you do as your job, that people in the audience can't hear that. They just see it. I mean, they can hear it when Quaid like yells out something really loud, you know, or anybody else, right? But usually you don't really, you know, the audience can't really tell what's happening or what is being said up there. So it's a privilege to be up there, and I want to. It's funny because I kind of forget sometimes that other people don't have that privilege of being the one holding the camera, pointing at someone's face, you know. So it's a weird thing, but that's what I do. All right, yeah, and just saying, I think wrapping it up saying, previous job experience, esports commentary through a time warp portal. Where else are you going to get that other than the best of 5? All right, folks, I'm going to call it there. Thanks for sticking around. It's been a long stream, and I really appreciate you coming out. Tomorrow, Thursday, episode 4, we're going to premiere 4 hours later due to yesterday's talk in this stream. anyway, long story short, there was a scheduling thing. We're going to move it a little bit later so we can have a Q&A stream. And then Friday will be back to the normal time, same time as today. And I would suspect that Friday's Q&A might go longer just because we'll have the whole show to talk about at that point. And so just be aware of that. And, thanks for coming out. Also, I mentioned this yesterday and I spotted it briefly last night. DMJ over on Twitter is over on Twitch at 6 p.m. Central doing a rewatch of the day's episodes. And also, I often looking at this commentary. And he has like permission to do that, which I think is awesome. But he's, that's another perspective because he's a player and I'm not. And so he's able to actually like analyze the gameplay. And I'm assuming that this one, right, with the buzzer beater, that he's going to be like pausing and be like, hold up, like, let's figure out what's going on here. Like, is that a, losing DAS? Like, where did the mistakes happen and how was the recovery? So that's an interesting other element you can look at. Those are happening each night. And there's a lively chat there as well. All right. Thanks for coming out. It's a pleasure hosting y'all. And we'll see you tomorrow. I'll figure out where the stop button is. And thanks a lot, guys. Bye.